All right. Got some people here. Actually getting started on time, so there's something wrong with that. Well, I guess it's a couple minutes late still. Still give it at least another minute or so, let people get online. I figure there's a fair number of people I know who are probably going to be going to that hackathon, so I want to talk a little bit about that, and maybe we'll talk more about it on Thursday as well. This is more very high level, and that'll include just some general suggestions for what you should be looking to get out of it. And then if people are interested in any suggestions about how to go to the next level or how they can speed up doing any real development or something at one, we can talk more about that on Thursday. Although I'd say it really depends on where your level is right now as to how much you would be able to just dive right in and do a lot of coding or not on one. So today is going to be a little bit of a collection, talk about hackathon stuff for a little while, and then try and work through some of the homework that you guys have had. I didn't see any posts with any of the tests or what they would consider a set of test cases or unit tests for some of the different exercises that I sent out. So I might show just an example of working through one of those, but I really want to see people get some of those up into whether it's GitHub or whether you post it somewhere else. But feel free to create that stuff in GitHub. You can just create a markdown file, a text file. You can make it a JavaScript file if you want and just put comments in there. Any way that you want to accomplish that. But getting something up so that it's visible and we can have more of a discussion around that would be great. I also realized I really haven't been keeping up very effectively with what's going on in Slack. So earlier today, I was scrolling through there. I'm probably going to be throwing some comments on stuff, even from stuff that might be a couple weeks old, just to let people know that, yeah, I've been noticing this stuff. Sorry, I haven't been posting anything on it or commenting on it. It's been a little crazy on my part, but I also don't get good notifications for Slack, so it's easy to forget about what's going on there. I don't know why my phone never seems to work for the notifications. It gives me like one every couple weeks and then nothing. So let's start off with just talking about a hackathon. If anybody online has been to one before or anything like that, why don't you go ahead and just say that you've been to a hackathon before as well. I think that'd be great to know, because that way you can also offer some advice, say something if you want about what your perspective was, even if you want to do that on Thursday when we're together. But been to two, wow, that's really cool. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit of what is a hackathon and what isn't a hackathon, and then what you should get out of it. Again, this is very high level, at least the slides that I've got, but I think that it's very hard to be more specific. I tried to look at the specifics of this hackathon, and they don't really have a lot there. They say something about trying to look at maybe government data, I think was about the only thing I could really try and pull out, but I'm not 100% clear what the topic is. A lot of times they'll be much more focused. So the first idea is just, what is a hackathon? What's trying to get done at one of these? And these are really short, usually 1 to 3 days, focused time to work on a product or feature idea with a cross-discipline team. I would say most of the time, for most hackathons, examples like this one here, you're going to be working on something from scratch, something that's new, not something that you're coming in with your existing product or feature ready to work off of. And that means that you're both having to brainstorm the idea that you're trying to work on and then build on top of that. That's why the emphasis is on the cross-discipline aspect. This isn't something where you go in there and usually you're not given a coding assignment. You're not given, here, just go, solve this problem. It's going to be something much more broad, and you're going to need to pitch ideas for some people. If you come up with an idea that's within the topic space, oh, here's something I think would be really cool to work on that fits this domain. And we can talk more about that when I mention some of the topics or other things that could exist. And then you're going to need to try and flesh out what that means. And that's going to include, what would this look like for what features would we want in this in a first version if we were trying to deliver a minimum viable product, the very minimal bit. What does that mean? What sort of maybe even you might even look at some of the things like what sort of testing would we need, or how would we verify that there's a market demand for what we're working on? It depends a little bit on what the hackathon is, but there's a lot of roles on any given hackathon team that aren't coding. And we'll get to that a little more. Oh, there we go. Next slide is hackathon is usually focused on a single topic or domain. And usually what's happens is you're given this sort of space to work in, maybe even access to something. And then the idea is to come up with ideas around that and try and develop either a product idea or a service, or it could be just about anything, a new feature. So here's some topics that ones I'm familiar with that I've seen at different hackathons. Working with government data, that's a really popular one. You may be that the hackathon is there and they're going to give you access, or they're going to highlight where you can get access to population or city services data for the different cities you're in. You may get access to crime statistics and data, like where are crimes taking place and what's going on. One that I've seen out of this sort of civic data before was one where some of the data was where have people reported issues such as potholes, and some of that sort of data for the city. And the idea around something like that, you may be wanting to come up with an idea about how to leverage that. An example for some of those that I've seen come out of some projects have been things like, I think it would be awesome to have a useful map of all of the greenways in Raleigh that you can pull up on your phone and find the nearest greenway and then what's available off of that greenway. And if you have access to the right data and stuff, that might be what you would build on. And that's going to need UI work. That's going to need some design work. That's going to need some thoughts about what you would be building. Ultimately, if you actually want to build something on it, would need coding. But sometimes on these, that's not even something that you're actually doing. Other topics that I've seen, improving social media dialogue or conversation, right? Like social media can be very negative or very toxic or take the wrong turn. What sort of tools could we work on to improve that? And you can imagine how that doesn't even always have to be driven by a technical team. There may be a team that is really just focused on thinking about the tools and what that would mean in using those. How would you apply those? How would you be able to change, I don't know, Twitter or Facebook and how stuff works, right? Could you decrease the spread of like fake news in some way, and what would that look like? And so some of these teams will just be focused on something like that. And then some of them may be focused on a very specific domain. Like maybe it's like, oh, we're an Internet of Things company. We provide a lot of tooling to help interconnect these devices, and we'd be interested in a hackathon around how that can improve healthcare. Or an example might be, if you don't want to do just Internet of Things, it might be like, could voice assistants improve healthcare? So there's a lot of different topics that could come up, or high level topics. And then your goal will be, at the very beginning of pretty much any hackathon, is to try and come up with ideas or pitches that you want to pitch. Usually what happens, I saw somebody say that they figured they'd be split into teams. Usually the teams are sort of self-forming at these things. So instead of it being, we're going to put this group of people together and then they come up with idea, usually what happens is there's an idea time where people can step up and say, oh, here's an idea that I think would be fun to work on. And then there's a sort of self-forming aspect of, oh, I think that would be cool to work on as well. I'll go over and group with them, or I have a different idea that would be cool to work on. And it might be that some of the ideas don't get worked. There's too many ideas. And then you end up saying, oh, well, nobody else wanted to work on this idea. I'll go switch over and work on this other idea that sounds really interesting. I think another important thing to understand about a hackathon when you're going to one is a hackathon is really a marketing exercise. At most hackathons I've been to, they have a pitch session at the end, and frequently the best marketed idea wins. And that may be sometimes that's an idea that has zero code written behind what they're pitching. They've just worked on marketing it very heavily, and they haven't actually gotten any code yet. Sometimes it's one that has a lot of code written, but they did a really good job with marketing. So what that emphasizes as well is that it's not just about going in and writing code. It's not about being a rock star developer, if you will, to be successful at a hackathon. There's a lot of other things that are important. If you have a really good marketing person, or you're really good at pumping up the slide deck and figuring out the use case and how it would apply, that can frequently be the difference between winning the hackathon or not. And that doesn't seem like what you would think if you were just thinking about it as a coding exercise. And then I think one of the most important things about a hackathon is really a chance to have fun. Don't go in there thinking all serious, like this is a really important, serious event. This is an opportunity for fun. This is an opportunity to play around with new ideas. Think about big ideas. Think about big concepts. What could it be? And hopefully to learn some new things quickly, whether that's a new programming tool, whether that's some way to a good example of something that might be right up the alley of some of you guys to be working on in a hackathon, given your skill and what you've been working towards, is I've seen a lot of these HTML things that you guys have been posting in the HTML CSS from your class, right? It might be a great idea to work on just the front end design, laying out some HTML, giving it some good appearance, some good design, because that's something that you can tackle. And maybe playing with new ideas, you might look at pulling in Bootstrap, which is a really, really popular framework for creating a design quickly. Might be an opportunity to play around with it and check it out. And so hackathons are really an opportunity to do a lot of that. They're not something that's supposed to be super serious or super dramatic. We've been doing them at my job for quite a while now, and we've had real practical ideas, and we've had really silly fun ideas, like a slot machine book recommender, and people spent a lot of time playing with the HTML to make it look like a slot machine where you pull down the handle and it's got slot machine sounds and the books rotate and stuff. So it can be sort of across the gamut. So now let's talk about a little bit about what a hackathon isn't, because these are some of the misconceptions that I think can hang people up going into one. And if you guys have any questions that you feel on anything I'm saying, please be posting those in chat. I'm going to keep an eye on chat while I'm talking. I would love to see questions about this stuff, or especially once I finish this, feel free to chime in and say, I would really like a little bit more on this on Thursday as well, so that we can just talk about it a little more if you want. So hackathon isn't all about developers and writing code. Some teams may not write any code at all. That's something that can happen at a hackathon. There may be teams where that team just doesn't write any code. They spend all of their time refining the idea, checking to see if it has a good market fit, thinking about what the features of it would be. Sometimes the idea doesn't even need code. Sometimes a hackathon project can be, we're going to fix a lot of data in this application that has out-of-date data because it's a critical application and people are getting wrong information. That can definitely happen. Also, if you are writing code, let's be clear, a hackathon is not a place where good quality code is written. It's not, you're not writing the same code that you would write if you're putting something in production at your job. This is ugly code. This is buggy code. This is code where you may have hard-coded conditions because you couldn't figure out how to deal with everything correctly. And it may be code that you can't even really show how stuff would work. Normally, you have to show only the optimal, like we've got this one path that works because we hard-coded it, Nothing else works, even though we're going to talk about it as if it does. And so we're just going to show that. So don't get stressed over the quality of code. And if you're not writing code and you're watching somebody else on a team write code and do things, don't think, oh, this is a great example of how I should write code if I'm going to be doing this for a living, because it is definitely not. Also, and this one, some people may feel differently, but I would strongly say a hackathon is not a good solo event. If you're going to a hackathon, try and be part of a team, try and have a group of people that you work with. Even if you think your idea was the best idea when you were suggesting it and nobody else joined the team, it's probably still better for you to step away from your idea and go work as part of a bigger team, because you're just going to get more from the event. You're going to just, I think, have a richer experience most of the time. And sure, sometimes on a team, it might be where somebody doesn't feel like they're necessarily contributing as much. But I think if you're really pushed for it, you can always find a place for you to be contributing on any of these teams, whether it's helping to refine the pitch, whether it's working on the code, whether it's working on the UI and design, or just, mock-ups of what stuff's going to look like. Yeah, I think that's a really good point too, is strive for a basic demo, as basic as you can get. Don't think we're going to put all of these features in. You can talk about those as future ideas for what you have, but when you try and show something, try and make it the simplest thing you can show. If you accomplish that and there's extra time, that's great. Now, given that this is all a one-day hackathon, and it's not even like, 8 to 8, it looks like the pitches are, I think, 4:30 or something, if I looked at it right. You're not going to get that far on an idea, especially at the just development level you're at. Heck, I would completely fail at getting very far on something, and I've been doing this for a long time. In a window that small, you're not going to get much code or anything else written, so it's better to focus on really small focused items. And then suggestions. This is just building on what I was saying. If you already have people you work with, well, whether those are Code the Dream people, other people who are going to be there, then I would strongly consider working together. Even if you think, oh, it's just going to be some of us Code the Dreamers, we're not going to be as strong with our code. It's going to be a better experience if you already know you work well with them and you can collaborate. Yeah, maybe you won't get a lot of code written, but at least you're going to enjoy working together versus feeling really awkward about having to work with people that you're not comfortable with. I think also really important is be engaged and energetic. Having excitement about whatever you're working on or pitching or presenting makes a huge difference. If you're not excited about the idea, if you're not engaged, if you're not really all there with what you're working on, that's going to show both in the pitch at the end, and it's going to show as you're working on the project. So I think that's really important. Be willing to try something new that you've never tried before. Maybe that's working on a design. Maybe it's working with a design like mock-up tool, a layout tool to lay out something. Maybe it's pitching an idea at the beginning and trying to get people on your team so that they'll work with you. All of these areas, I think, are great areas for people to work on. And even if you're like, man, I've never done that, but I really want to try that out, give it a go. Definitely don't feel like you have to stick with the stuff that you're already comfortable with. I think the most important than anything else is just have fun. This isn't a serious thing, right? For those of you who are going to be there, this isn't about don't go there thinking, well, we have to win this. Like, go there thinking, I want to have a fun time working on some ideas. I want to maybe learn a lot of new stuff, maybe meet some new people and get to know how they do things. But don't go in there super serious about trying to win the hackathon or trying to do anything else in that space. It's just going to be a frustrating experience if that's what you're pushing for. All right. So I can talk again a little bit more about some of this stuff on Thursday, but as I said, if you if you want to help out in different areas, right? The HTML CSS seems like a really good area for you guys to potentially dive into because you're starting to learn that stuff. It's an area that I feel is really possible to work with pretty quickly and early on. And there's a lot of really good tools to help you out. Probably the most popular is just Bootstrap. This is something where it'll even help walk you through how to pull it down, how to get started, and start doing some layouts and design stuff with it. So if you want to contribute to a team and you're like, oh man, I can play with the design side of this. I can do a mock-up in HTML, or I can create a design using Bootstrap and HTML to do that. That might be a great way for you to contribute to just about any team. Might be great to help with the marketing portion of it, or the pitch, or any of those aspects. But I definitely think that there's a role for anyone. Are hackathons typically on a specific aspect, or are they all inclusive? That's a good question. I think usually the hackathon will let you know what they're looking for, whether it's we want to work on just this back-end portion or we want to work on everything. If it's not really specified, then I would say it's probably more all-inclusive, the idea is to work towards building a full stack solution a lot of times. Again, this one is very vague with their guidelines. They didn't provide like any data sources to use ahead of time, any frameworks, as far as I could tell, to use from their just public meetup or Eventbrite pages. So I'm not certain if there's going to be a very specific domain to work with. The best thing I could see is it looked like it had something to do with data. And so there may be stuff that's not even code related to play around with data, right? You can go find yourself some sort of tool, whether it's even just Google spreadsheets or something else, but you can go search for some, data analytics tools to play around with something online if it's a data thing or hackathon. And you may walk away having learned some new insights from the data by being able to put it into a tool and ask questions about it or query it or something else. That may be something that involved zero code, but what you took away was some really useful information that was learned and gleaned out of the data. So it really varies depending on if there's some sort of domain that's going to be pitched as what to work on. All right. So happy to answer any more hackathon questions while we keep going. I think what I want to do next is let's try and work on doing this jading case problem. I heard that some people had problems getting this solved. There were some challenges with it. So I think we can work through solving this together, and we'll do it a little bit like what we did when we were working through some of the Pig Latin, where I'm going to try and do it in the more verbose way, like writing all of the code out bit by bit, as if I don't have a lot of useful functions and utilities to help me. And then I will try and write it out using some other tools to show you different ways to solve this same problem. And that might honestly take pretty much the rest of the class if I keep going on this through the whole thing. Oh yeah, I can post the original GitHub link. Well, let me see if I can. Here we go. Now, one of the things I'll say about that is that one didn't include this nicer bit of HTML that really has the content of it. I'm not exactly sure, since I wasn't there when Daisy was presenting this, if the idea was for you guys to write this HTML yourself, or if the idea was that this would be provided, because there was a reference to it. So I'm just going to act like it was provided. This is what's up there in that version. And I'm just going to swap out this more complete bit of HTML. And that's partially just because we're not really focused on HTML in this class. So I'm going to skip over a lot of those details. But if there's any questions about what's going on here, it's pretty simple. Specify the HTML doc type. We've got a link to our CSS so that we have some styling. Let me indent something here so it's a little easier to read. All right, let me see what other indentation I need. I think there's another level. Yep. All right, I think that looks correct. And then we just have some markup. We've got a container, we've got a header, this wrapper right here, an input with an ID, a button with an ID, and then a text area that we're going to output some content with an ID. Yes, I see. Hey, is that just saying you're online now, Maurice? And then we've got a bit of reference down here that loads our script. So we could, let me check this. I don't think this will work. If I just try and load this file. I think I'm going to double check. I think it'll yell at me saying that it's not going to load the. Oh, no, it looks like it loaded the JavaScript. Okay, I thought it wouldn't load JavaScript anymore in this environment, but I guess it loaded it after all. So I'm also going to change this. I'm going to put my dev tools side by side here instead of that way. That way you guys will be able to see anything that I work on with my, put them on the other side. There we go. That way you guys can see me working in the developer tools with any problems at the same time as I'm working in the actual code. All right, so again, I wasn't there. I had to go double check what Jaden Case is a reference to, and I guess reference to how Jaden Smith has a habit of capitalizing every word in a sentence. And so the idea is to be able to take whatever gets input here and to give you the capitalized version of each word. So, you know, if somebody said hello world, it would be translated to hello world. Oops, down in the output. So I'm going to start, I'll go over to the JavaScript file and start thinking about what do I need to do. We already have some good comments here that are going to get us started pretty nicely. So let's see what we have here. Oh, we don't need a semicolon there. Let me check some of these code bits. It's yelling at me about some stuff. Why is that? Oh, because I've got this new text bit here. Okay. So there's something a little screwy right now already. I'm going to change this to look like that. I think I fixed whatever is wrong with the code there. That's just temporary. But let's start looking at what it's talking about. So it says here we've got a variable named text that's going to get whatever is in the DOM. And we haven't talked a lot about this, but this is how you get a value out of a DOM element, or this is how you get a reference to a document element. It's document.getElement by ID. There's also some other ones, such as by class. But this is the one that works with an ID. Duh. And so we're saying the one with original. So if we go look at, let me put this stuff side by side if I can. There we go. So now if we split like that and we've got this document get element by ID, we can see that that should be this input element. And this is all inside of a function, this Jaden case. So we can call this function. I'm going to change this new text to just be an empty string right now. Oops. But we can call this function. That's interesting. It also takes the text argument. There's some things in here that I would change the way that this works. So, and we'll get into some of this, but let's have this Jaden case be more self-contained for now. And I'm going to not have it take in text. It'll just use the text that it fetches itself. And we may refine that a little bit as we keep going. So we need to be able to invoke this. So we can just call it like we would any function. And then let's see what happens if we run that. I don't know what's going to happen yet. So I'm going to refresh this page. Let me clear my history here. Let me check this. I should have this. Maybe it doesn't, it's not set up to clear. Oh, there we go. Clear the log in between. All right. So we can see what happens. Except nothing's going to happen because it runs. What we're doing is this right now is just running. Well, let me double check here. Hold on. I could be wrong. Oh, it's already being invoked. It's being invoked on the on click of this button, right? Okay, so I don't need to call it. That's the key about what's going on there. So I shouldn't need to call it because this Jaden case is getting called on this on click handler in the JavaScript over here, or in the HTML. But we're not seeing anything when I call this, even though, let's double check. Sure enough, there is an edited text element. Why isn't anything getting put in there? Well, I have new text as an empty string right now. What if I make this some text? I'll just make this test. So I haven't even really started to solve this actual problem yet. I just made it. Ah, there we go. I'm getting some sort of output here. It looks like it's writing it. When I click submit, it goes ahead and puts that text there, right? And you'll notice, again, I'll emphasize this again and again as we go through class. You'll notice that I'm not writing much code at all between my tests here. I wrote almost nothing, and then I'm testing real fast. That's that workflow that I really recommend whenever you're doing any development, is do a minimal amount of stuff. So now let's say, I don't just want this to be test. I already think I'm getting the text out of this. Maybe I'll just make this text. And then that should, hold on, let me put this back. That should get me, and I'm going to change where this is a little bit because this is actually meeting this portion right here, right? We haven't done these earlier comments. I'm going to put it under here. Now, whatever I type, I think what'll happen when I refresh my browser, you've got to remember to do that in between each one so that it loads the new JavaScript, is I think it will put whatever I type up there down below. Cool. So it's something pretty simple. Nothing too complex going on right now. Pardon me. But we're building the basis here. We're just making sure that we've got the portions that are connected to how the browser works working correctly. So now that we've solved this portion about the browser, we've got something worked out here. We don't have to worry about getting stuff out of here, writing it here. That's awesome. If this was me working in Git right now, by the way, and so I am actually in Git. I've got all this. Here's what I would do at this point is I would go ahead and just check my changes, which that was a lot of change. So I would make these two separate commits. I would actually commit twice in Git. So again, I'm just using Visual Studio Code. It's a little bit cheating. Let me go back and use the tooling you guys would be familiar with. So this would be more like the tooling you're used to. That's a little small, but so let me do git s. I see two files changed. So I'm going to add just the HTML one because I want that to be a commit that tells me just what I changed there. And now I'm going to do a git s, and what you'll see is I have just the HTML one here. And then I'm like, okay, now I want to go ahead and make this commit. So I'm going to commit it with a message that says, created HTML for input and output. And then, this is just because I'm in the habit of it, I would push this up. I'm like, all right, I made a change. And since I use SSH, it'll do it that way. And now it's already up there on GitHub. And I did that one little step at a time. But if I do git s, I still have another change, right? So now what I could do is using that same workflow, I'll git add. And this time, since I only have the one file, I can be extra lazy and just do the dot because I know that I want everything to be pushed up. And I've got that file there. And now I can do a git commit -m and say, like, read from input and write to HTML. And I'm going to push that up. Oh, and I have some, sorry, I accidentally forgot there. I've got some aliases that I've set up because I do things often enough. So I have git p alias to git push, so I don't have to type push. Yes, I'm lazy to not want to type those 3 extra characters every time. If you want to do that, you can set that same thing up, but that probably only makes sense if you're pushing stuff up as frequently as I am at, say, work. All right, so now you'll notice I have no changes over here, and we did what was pretty much the smallest bit of work that we could do. Okay, I think that's a good question. Am I putting this on GitHub to work while keeping the original intact? I will show you when we get a little farther along what's going on, but the original isn't really intact. However, we can always get back to it. So here I did a git log right now, and you can see here are my commits, and then here were the commits that came before me from somebody else, Daisy, and then here are my commits. And we could get back to any commit that I've made. Look at that, I made some change on this. I don't even know when I did that. Oh, this last Saturday? Interesting. Oh yeah, that was when I was playing with it earlier, right? When I was teaching class. So if you want to look at the state of your code at any previous point in time, you can do that really easily. Don't worry too much about this, but let's say you made some changes and you're like, oh man, I need to go back and look at what it was like before because I need to see the code from then, right? So one thing you can do to do that at any point in time is I'm going to do this git log again, but I'm going to say, what is it? I think this is, there we go. So I sort of collapsed it so I could see it all more compactly here. And let's say I want to go back to this point in time before I changed the values before I changed any of the JavaScript. Or I want to go back to this point in time for the header before I changed anything else. I can take that. This is what's known as a hash. It's just a value that you can go back to, and I can check that out. And it's going to give me a message here. Another good question. How do you get back to a command line in Bash after you're done reviewing your log? Fall back to if your log is really long, so not like this one. Let me go to a different project real fast. I'm going to open another tab so I don't lose my state here. All right, where is this? Code the dream. Let's look at what I have here. What's one that has a lot of code here? I think Kanban Redux is going to have a lot. So if I do a git log, oh, maybe not. All right, so let me check this then. I thought that was going to have a lot. All right, I guess I'll just do my JavaScript basics because this is my class. And since that's where I've been putting all of my notes, there's going to be a lot in there. And so what you'll see is it shows one page at a time. And the two ways you can navigate when you're working with this is you can, I wonder if I can show key commands. I wonder if this is going to do what I want. Probably not. So you can hit space to go down by a page at a time, or by some entries at least. And then you can hit Q to exit out. So it's Q like quit. You could also, if you're not sure about that, you could always do like, I think, hold on, maybe it won't. Thought Control Z will, but it's not really what you want to do because it's actually still running in the background. So Q is what you want to do. There's sort of a set of things that you always try if you're stuck on a command line like this. You try like Control C, you try Q, you try some of these different commands. But yeah, that's, I don't know, just the best thing to try. So if you look, let's go back here now, talking about this Git stuff, and you'll see I checked out this commit, and it even has a message here. You are in detached head state. You can look around, make experimental changes, and commit them, and I can discard any commits I make in this state without impacting any branches by performing another checkout. But what does it mean that I'm in detached head state? What did I do? Well, let's go back and look at what I have here. Sure enough, my HTML file is back to what it was before. It doesn't show any of my changes. And my JavaScript file has all of the bugs that it had before. It doesn't have any of the changes that I've made. And that's because I'm back at the exact point my code was in right after I committed the increased header font size. So all of my files are back at that point in time. That's why you don't have to save some copy somewhere else or hold on to something. That's what Git does for you. It keeps a full history of everything that you've done. And you can go back and look at it. And if you really want to create a branch off of that, you can, but it's not usually something that you do. So now I want to, how do I get back, okay? I can do git checkout head. And what that's going to do, or should do, is bring me right back to the point in time where I was at. Let me double check. I think I did something wrong. Oh, it didn't actually change me, sorry. I can do git checkout on my master branch, and it should move me back to where I need to be. I could be wrong, though. All right, let's see here. All right, so I just checked out my branch again. And that took me right back to where I was at. Get checkout master. It says, oh, the previous head position was here, but now we're back on the master. We're back to where you wanted to be. Let me know if you want that clarified it, or you still have a question or not. That's how you can sort of go back to a previous version. And I can show you also how to work on branches later, so that if you want to try something out, but you want to leave the main branch alone, you can do that very easily with Git. So let's build on this. We're definitely not going to get through more than this tonight now, seeing where we're at. Yeah, git checkout, not necessarily git checkout master, but git checkout the branch that you want to go to. Master just happens to be our branch. So if we went over here and we did git branch, we would see that we actually only have one branch right now. We haven't worked with multiple branches. Maybe I'll do that or show some of that as well as workflow when we move a little farther down and we've solved this in sort of the most basic way. So I'm going to move a little faster as we try and solve this sort of brute forcey. And then we can always come back and talk about some more of this in more detail if we want. So here's what we know. We know that we are, no, again, let me line stuff up with the actions. I love that this file has comments, and I just want the actual things happening to sort of go and play line with them. So here we have, we're getting the text from the input field and setting equal to a variable named text, all right? Done. And then here we're creating, let me work on my indentation a little bit. We're creating a new text variable that's going to be what we want the output to be. For now, it's just the original input text. I'm going to move that. Well, let me look at the documentation here. It's got some very specific documentation about how to accomplish this, but I'm not even going to actually solve it that way first. We'll come back and solve it that way. I'm just trying to think about how I would solve this brute force. So what I'm going to say is, what would I do to try and solve this problem? Let me put some comments here. I need to I guess I need to walk through the input string. Walk through the input string, iterate. Let me use a programming type term. Iterate through the input string. Finding, well, no, you know what? Let me go with again, I like doing stuff at the most simple way possible. So let's simplify this before we do anything complex, right? Let's assume that our input string is one word and only one word, and that's all we need to solve. So how am I going to solve that? So if I've got one word and I just want to make sure that the first letter is uppercase, then what I want to do is create a new string. What's the best way to do this? Let's see. Create a new empty string. Step through each character of the input string. For the first character, uppercase that character. All right? So let's see what that looks like. Let's turn this, let's redo this a little bit now and say we're creating a new empty string. All right? Oops, gotta tell my computer not to reboot right now. And in reality, this is going to look like strings are, this is me getting into the technical terms here. I'm going to treat this string like it's mutable, but actually strings are immutable in JavaScript. So each string that we work with is actually a different string. So it's a little weird to create an empty string, but it still works for our case. Then what we want to do, the next bit is step through each character of the input string. All right. So I know how to do that with, let's go with a for loop. For var character equals 0. Character is less than text.length. Character plus plus. This isn't really the character though. This is the character index. So let me rename it. And I'll use my little cheat here to do that. I want to step through those. And then I've got a little bit of logic here. This is all very brute force right now. That says for the first character, uppercase that character. All right. So if character index is 0, I need more specifics. Write that to the new string. Otherwise, write the character at that index to the new string. All right, so if our character index is 0, then we want new text plus equals. We're going to append something to it to be the text at character index. Okay, now how do I uppercase it? Well, that's where you're going to have to go look up some documentation. It might already be in there, but we can go see if a string has something for us here. Let's see what a string has. What are some of the methods I've got here? I have character at, character code at, concatenation, includes, ends with, index of, local compare, normalize, pad at the end, pad at the start, repeat, replace, slice, starts with substring, to local lowercase, to local uppercase. Huh? We also have just to uppercase. Okay. Returns the calling string value converted to uppercase. So let me go read that and see what it says. Oh, that converts all of the characters in the string to uppercase, but because we're only getting one character at a time, that works just fine for us. So we can do to uppercase on this character for our new text, and that should be fine. And then we've got a little bit of logic here that says otherwise. Well, then we need to add the text at the character index to our new text. So this is all presuming we just have one word. We just did the logic for only one word, no spaces. All right, let's see if this works. I don't know. Try hello. Oh, we got an uppercase. Good. Yes. This worked. All right, it didn't work there because we have multiple words, right? But it worked in this case for the one thing that we have. Feel free to ask questions while we're going through this if there's any. But we're just going to sort of keep building on this, right? Now let's, again, if this is me, I'm feeling good about what I just did. I solved a portion of this. So I'm going to go back to my Git, and I'm going to add this file since it should be the only thing that's changed. Check my status. All right, here's my file, and now I'm going to commit that, saying correctly uppercase or Jaden case, single word. All right, and then I can push that up. So it's also up in GitHub. I have it both locally and GitHub. You know, that way I didn't work any farther. I feel like I've got a successful thing. I'm not going to risk losing that state of my code. There's no chance now that I lose that because I just saved it in Git, and Git's going to keep that around. So if I screw something up in the future, I can always get back to this state. Okay, so now we've got a problem here, which is we're not dealing with a space, or how can we deal with it if there's spaces? Well, let's just, first things first, let's try and identify a space. All right? So let's say else if and I'm going to change this stuff a little bit because I don't want to type text character index a lot. So I'm going to create a variable in here called character that is just the text at this index. So we can use that in place of the character index. So now let's say if the character is a space, we want to do something. For now, let's say I don't even know exactly what to do and I just want to test some stuff. I'm just trying to make sure it all works. And if it's not a space, do this. So I'm just going to console log it first, just make sure this is working, right? Because you don't have to make it this fancy, but I will. There was a space at, you know, position. There we go. Let's just see if that works. Oops. Go this way. Refresh my code. Okay. Oh, it sort of lost that space because I didn't do anything with it, right? I lost my space. That's fine, but it did notice it. And then what happened is in the code, because I'm not printing it out, it then goes back around and ends up back at this new text thing, and we're slamming some stuff together, right? Okay, so I know I can find a space. That's interesting. And what do I want to do here? Let's see. What do I want to do if a character was a space? For the next character, uppercase it. I guess that's what I want to do. So let's see here. If it's a space, I want to uppercase the next character. Well, there's a couple ways I could handle this. First off, let's make sure I write this space to my new text. And then for the next character, I want to uppercase it. So I could like step forward an extra step to like go, oh, the next thing should be uppercased. But maybe I don't want to do that because it might be tricky. It might be confusing to do that. So another option here could be I could have a variable. And I'm going to set that variable outside of this. I'm going to call it we'll call it should uppercase. what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set it to true originally. And then I'm going to change my logic here a little bit to make this stuff work. I'm going to say, oh, if should uppercase is true, then I want to uppercase that character. And I also want to set should uppercase be false. That way, the next character, that way it's going to not think that it should be doing uppercasing, right? All right. So then if I encounter a space, I want to set should uppercase back to true. Okay, let me see here. So if it should uppercase, it does this. If I encounter a space, then add the space and set should uppercase to true. Otherwise, oh, I can just do character here, right? Otherwise, write the character. All right, let's see if this works. Let me know if that you can follow that. There's a lot of ways to have solved that, right? So let's just try the basic ones again. We'll try one word. Did it work? Oh, that worked. All right. Now we're going to try hello world. Let's see what happens here. Awesome. It looked like it worked. Now maybe I've got some problems though. What happens if, what about two spaces? Ah, shoot. All right. So there's definitely a problem there. You know, we're not quite solving the case with two spaces. Let me go look at the code for a minute. And this is where this is exactly where it's useful to try and step through the code and say what happens. So let's say, oh, let me give a test. Here's my test input is H space space or I space space T. So we've got two spaces. All right. So we start at 0. Should uppercase is true. So we go ahead and put I in there and it's uppercase. And then we set should uppercase to false. That means we'll skip these other conditions. Come back. Now we're at 1, which is a space. Should uppercase is false. So we go to the next case. Character is a space. So we go ahead and add that space in and set should uppercase to true. All right. So should uppercase is true. Skip back around. Should uppercase. Oh, but what we need to really do, it looks like, is we're on 2 and it's another space. Maybe if I flip this condition around, maybe if I check first if the character is a space. So I'm going to change my condition. I'm going to cut all of this stuff, move it down here, make this the else, and make this the original if. So let me try and walk through it with my condition now. So I have I. It's not a space, so it moves on. Then it says, oh, it should uppercase, so it puts a capital I in. All right, now we have a space at 1. So it's a space, it adds it to it, should uppercase equals true. And then it goes through. The next one, we'll hit it again. All right, I think we've solved it. Let me double check with the actual code. I've put multiple spaces in. Let's see what happens. Awesome. All right. I think we've got it working generally now. But it's very, very brute forcey, right? We're doing a lot of complex work here, a lot of complex logic. But that goes back to what I was talking about. The steps for writing any piece of code. Get it working, get it right, get it good. Or get it right, get it fast if you want. So we've got something working. And maybe there's some cases that wouldn't work here. I don't know. I may still have some edge cases I'm missing, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. So let's add this in, and then let's commit it, saying correctly Jaden case multiple words, and then I'm going to push that up. Yeah, that is, I mean, that's another way you could do this, is by concatenating the next character as well instead of just that one. The challenge if you took that approach is you would also want to update your character index potentially when you did that, because you would want to make sure that your index was correct and you didn't actually print the same character into the new string multiple times, right? All right, so we've got a functioning bit of logic here. Now, if this was me, because I'm a huge fan of functional programming, I would actually take all of this and move this into a function as well, instead of even having it there, which is like function. You know, I know it's weird because it's pulling part of this, and I'll leave Jaden case there, even though normally if this was me, I would rename the other one Jaden case to be like on submit or on text submit, and this one would be called Jaden case. But in deference to leaving it as it is there, I'm just going to redo this one, and I'm going to say get Jaden cased version or whatever. I'm going to pass the text in, move all of my code here, and then when we're done with this function, I'm going to return new text. So now what I need is I need to call this somewhere. Well, I could just call it right here. I don't even actually need a variable new text here. I can do get Jaden cased version with my text. And let me see if this works. It should. I keep going in the wrong direction. Let's try some of my use cases. Hello, hello world. Hello world with a lot of extra space. Well, there is one thing weird, which is all that space disappears, but that's not actually my fault. That's because if you remember, HTML gets rid of extra space. It collapses all the space to one, so you're not going to see it in the HTML because it's there in what we wrote, but HTML is going to hide all of that and show you just the one space. All right, so now we, again, wrong direction. We split it off into a function, which is nice. Again, if this is me, I would commit this. This is sort of that workflow you'll see from me all the time if I'm working on stuff, is tiny bit of work and commit. So let me do get status, just check. All right, get add my new thing. Get commit -m. Split string logic into a function. Okay. So now we've got some options. Now we can simplify the logic using some of these other tools. But I sort of wanted to brute force it first, show you how you could solve it without even any of the more advanced tools that are mentioned here, right? But now we're saying, boy, this is sort of tedious to step through it and look for the spaces. Don't we have some sort of tool that could help us here? Is there anything that's going to make this a little easier? Well, luckily the notes already said some stuff here, so let me pull them over here a little bit. It says, new text is equal to the result of calling the split method on text and calling the map method on the resulting array. All right, that sort of implies that there's some sort of split method for me to call. So let me check my documentation. A string has a split. All right, what does this do? Split method splits a string object into an array of strings by separating the string into substrings using a specified separator. So in this case, the separator is a space. And we get, let me just double check what you get back, an array. Yep, that's what I would expect. So we get an array of strings then, split on a space. Okay. Well, that we should be able to do pretty easily. So let's try this out. And now, because we're going to go ahead and try something different than what we were doing before, and we're not 100% sure on this, don't worry too much about understanding exactly what I'm doing with this little bit of the workflow, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new branch because I'm going to try something different. So I'm going to say, let me create a branch. And the way you can do that is you just do git checkout, the branch name. And if you want to be really shorthand, you can do a -b, which will create a branch. Oh, wait, let me see. The process is like git branch first, I think. I think you create a branch using git branch. But normally the workflow a lot of people use is git checkout -b, which will both create the branch and switch you into that branch all at once. So let's try and do this, and let's call this one, I don't know, simplify using string split method. Yeah. I'm going to change that to use dashes. It doesn't matter that much, but now what you'll see is I've got a new branch here. So let me look at the branches, and you can see we've got two. I'm on the new one. And if we look at the log, I'll do the short version. It's got all of my commits from my master on here. So all of my work that I've been working on is in this branch as well for me to start with. And now I can make changes and not even worry about that master. So if something, I'm like, oh, I really want to go back, which I'll show you in a moment, you still can. All right, so now I say I want to simplify this. So let me try, I want to get, oh man, all of my stuff is indented one level more than I want. I'm going to unindent that a tiny bit. There we go. So let me try and get the words. And I'm going to get the words by taking my text and splitting it on the space. And then I'm just going to see what happens with that. I haven't changed any of my other code, so everything should still work. I just want to see if this words bit works. All right. Let's see what happens here. Awesome. It looks like I did get a list of words the way I wanted. So I got something to work with here. So now if I have all of those, well, I'm not going to have to do any of this logic about finding a space because I know that each one of these is already an individual word. So I can simplify all of this for loop. Let me almost go back to what I had before. All right, now I need to loop over all of my words. So for word, let's start at our word index. Word index is less than words.length. word index increments. All right, so now for each word, the word equals words at the index that I'm at. So now I've got each individual word, or one word at a time, and I know I want to uppercase that. And what we had before was actually something that uppercased a word. We sort of lost it, but I'm going to write it in a different fashion this time around. So if we know that we have a word, and we know we want to uppercase it, we can check and see if there's other tools, and it's mentioned up here, some other tools that let us get the first character of the word or the later ones. Well, you know what? Let's I'm going to go ahead and actually leave the logic the way it was before, but I'm going to put it in its own function. I'm going to call this uppercase word. And this is going to be pretty much the same logic that we had before. We're going to iterate over all the characters in it. That's less than word.length. And then we increment our character index, except this is the first version, remember? So we just need to say if character index is 0, then uppercase is going to get word at that index dot to uppercase. Otherwise, it's going to get word at the character index. And then what I need to do here is just return that. Return my uppercase word. And so now what I've done is take all that logic about uppercasing a single word and shoved it into a function. So I can just close that, hide it, ignore it, act like I don't care how to do that. And I don't care about the details right now. And now here in this function, I can say, all right, I've got a word. What do I want my new text to be? I want my new text to be, what I want to add to that is the uppercase of the word plus a space. Something a little funny about the space. Maybe I don't always want to add a space in. But I'll do that right now. We'll see what happens. All right, let's see if this works. Let's try it with a simple case. All right, that worked. What about hello world? Hello world seemed to work too. Oh, I don't need to, I can get rid of this stuff. I don't need to console log this. That was just me testing something. So let me try that again. Hello world. Submit. Yep. With a lot of space. Looks like it's working. But I'm going to show you one thing that's a little hidden here that's subtle is because we added a space after every word, we actually added a space here at the end too. I'm going to gloss over that for the time being, but that's something that we would want to fix. We don't necessarily want that space at the end, right? So what we could do instead is there's a couple ways to catch that. You could have logic that says put the space before a new word each time, but only if the new text already has something in it, or you could have logic that says if this is our last word we're processing, don't add in a space at the end. Either one of those sort of works. But let's see if we can make this even simpler. So now, again, I'm going to move a little faster and not necessarily commit, but normally I would do a commit right now again. Boom, committing this code at this point. So let's go back and see what we've got. We're already calling split on everything. That's nice and easy. And then it says we can do something call map. Well, I'm going to skip over that for a second, and I'm going to step down to this bit of logic. It says return the first letter of each element in the array, concatenate it with the rest of the letters in each element. Okay. Interesting. So what if that looks like it's just part of this logic? So maybe I can simplify all of this. Maybe what I can do is uppercase. It shows me this X slice. Let's go look at the documentation for that. What does slice do? The slice method extracts a section of a string and returns it as a new string without modifying the original string. Oh, so I can get a subsection of a string. And what is the argument? The beginning index. So it takes a beginning index and an ending index. So the zero-based index, and then it returns a new string. Okay. So maybe I can get this uppercase just by getting, as it said, the first character of the word and doing a 2 uppercase on that and appending to that the slice of everything after that. I'm going to comment this out for a second. We're going to check and see if this works. Oh, we've got a problem. Cannot read property 2 uppercase of undefined. All right. Let's see here. We need to debug this and figure out what happened. So how did undefined get passed into my 2 uppercase? Or how does this have undefined? How did this get an undefined value of some kind? I don't know. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to console log each one of these. Let's try and debug this and just see what's going on. So I know I want to use this same input, so let me capture that, refresh my page, put it in here, and let's see where the error happened. So it tried hello world, and then it tried to pass in the space. Interesting. All right, maybe I need to check my words again. What do I get in this case? What are my words? Ooh, I'm getting a whole bunch of spaces in my words now. That doesn't seem right. So maybe this doesn't handle multiple spaces. Will it handle this? That seemed to work. So I may have, I mean, let's be real, right? This is one of those cases where you may not solve all of them. But so I'm probably going to skip over trying to deal with multiple spaces right now, so that I can use this simpler version of the code for the time being. But you can begin to see that sometimes even going with something simpler has its drawbacks because you may not be able to solve everything, right? But now look at our uppercase. And one of the beautiful things about what happened here is we didn't have to change any of this Jaden cased version logic right now. We changed the logic for how we uppercased a word, but nothing changed in this because this bit of logic is independent from the logic for how to uppercase an individual word. And this is one of the beautiful things that we've done by creating this uppercase word function. We've separated them so that changing the two different things, how do we get words and how do we convert a word to an uppercase version, are accomplished by two separate functions. So that looks like we're pretty much doing this. I'm going to go ahead and take this comment and put it down in here, because this is the way that we're handling this now. Now, what are we missing on these earlier bits? So we've got, it says new text is equal to the result of calling the split method on text and calling the map method on the resulting array. Now, we haven't dealt with this very much in class, but this is another one of those. Let's go take a look at how this works and what it does. So what does map do on an array? Well, I'm going to look up the array documentation and look for map in here. And I think I could do it this way too. Here we go. So it says the map method creates a new array with the results of calling a provided function on every element in the calling array. So let's see what we have here. Now this is a syntax you guys haven't seen. Don't worry too much about the syntax, but that's just a function. This is another way to write a function. We'll talk about this a little bit in a future class, but this just says a function that takes argument x and returns x times 2. So if our array was 1, 4, 9, and 16, and we called map with this function, it would be 2, 8, 18, and 32. All right, simple enough. Oh, here's another example. Here it'll call the square root for each number. So it gets the square root for 1, 4, and 9. So we get back 1, 2, and 3. So it looks like we can just pass in any function, right? All right, so building on that, that I guess is what we do in place of this bit of logic in some respect. So let's try that out. Let's do words.map. And then what we need to give it is the function that we want to apply to each word. Well, lucky us, we already created a function that takes a word and returns an uppercase version of it. So we've already got something that does that. Now let's console log words after that and see what happens after we've done that, right? Let's go ahead and just test that. Hello world, we got hello world, and we just got hello world. Oh. And of course, we're not putting anything down here because I'm not doing that right now, but what happened? Why did I get hello world back instead of something new? Well, let me go read the documentation again. Maybe I missed something. Ah, creates a new array. All right, so if I go down here and look, the return value is a new array with each element. So it's not changing our original array. That means I need to assign what comes back from this somewhere. So maybe I can assign this to uppercase words. And if I log that, let's see what happens. Awesome, got an array. Okay. But now the one issue is, as mentioned, so this is accomplishing these two steps. And we've sort of simplified this code. Again. But you notice, even as we simplified all of this, just as I was saying before, we didn't have to touch this uppercase word. That logic didn't have to be touched. So by splitting this out, we got a huge benefit in terms of focusing on one area or another. All right, and now there's even a little bit here that says turn the array back into a sentence. That's the magic bit that you guys have been seeing in chat, which is exactly how you can do it very easily. So let me come down here. So how are we going to turn it into a sentence? Well, I'll just save us the time of looking up the documentation for that. There's a join. And so what we can do is we can say new text equals uppercase words dot join. And what this does is it joins all of the items in the array together, and it separates them with the specified character. So in this case, let's just say a space, because that's probably what we wanted, right? And we're going to assign that to new string, because join, I don't know if it'll show me anymore, but let me see if I do this, it'll show it again. It returns a string. So I can put that into my new string and write that out. Let's see how that goes. Awesome. It looks like we're working. But many spaces still doesn't work. Maybe that's something that we are okay with, right? Or maybe we need to deal with it ourselves separately. But you can see what we started with there. We started with something that was very basic. We did almost all of the steps except for figuring out how to do the uppercase. We used a method for that. And now we've converted it into using a lot of different methods, greatly simplifying the logic in the code, and also splitting it out into some useful subfunctions that let us do different portions of it. And what I would do now, again, I've got something working the way I want. I'm going to look at it, add that, and say convert to use split and map methods. So now I can look at my log. Did something go wrong with that commit? Let me check. Hold on. Oh, it did. All right. Did I do something wrong there? Oh, I didn't actually tell it. Just a moment. -m. There we go. So let me do status. All right, we're good. And now in the log, we've got this. But maybe we screwed up, or maybe we decide we want to go back to our previous version of it. We still have our other branch, which is our master. And we can just check out master, just like we checked out a commit version before. And if we look at the log there, we can see that none of that logic is there. And if we go look at our code, we can see that it's still using the old version of all of our code over in the master branch. So now we've got these two different branches, and we can check out our simplify one again. Oops. Aren't you going to do this? I guess it won't give me code completion for that. And we're back to looking at our new version of the code. And the last thing we'll do tonight, let's say we decide we actually do want to use this version of the code. This is what we want from now on. We don't want the other version. There's several different ways to handle that. In this case, I'm going to push this up to GitHub, which means I need to actually, since I'm pushing up a new branch, I need to specify everything about it. Man, I really wish this, I need to fix some things. I don't know why it's not giving me my code completion. I'm going to push that up. I'm going to check out my master branch and just make sure that it's up there as well, that everything for each one of these is up there. And now we can go to look at GitHub for a moment. And here's perhaps an even easier way to look at different versions of your code. So if this is my, which project I've been working in? Yeah, this should be right. That's interesting. Why am I not seeing them? Maybe it went somewhere else. Let me check. All right, let me check my other one that I created, or let me check my remotes for it real fast. I've been working in my Jaden case new, not the Jaden case. There we go. That's what's wrong. So I need to go to this other project. So now we can see I've got 8 commits here. And I can go look at my code at any point in time just by saying browse the repository at that point in time. And I can see what the files look like then. So that's probably the easiest way for you to go back and look at old stuff is if you've already pushed it up to GitHub, it's really easy to go back and look at old commits and old branches. But now it also tells me, oh, hey, you pushed up this other branch. You can compare it to your master branch and create a pull request. And don't worry too much about the details of this, but this is definitely the easiest workflow for doing some of this, where I'll say, oh yeah, I want this to move into my master branch. So here's the branch I'm in. I want it to go to master eventually, and I'm going to create this pull request. Again, don't worry about too much details here. This is something you'll see more as we go forward. And then because I already know that this is what I want, I'm going to merge it. And I'm going to confirm the merge. And now it even gives me the option to delete the branch because it's already been merged into master. All right, I deleted my branch. Now if I look on GitHub here and I look at my commits, oh, sure enough, I have 2 more commits. I've split stuff into split and master, and I have a merge commit, a commit that shows me merging that branch in. So now if I'm just looking at master, all of my stuff is up correct. But if I go on my local computer and check, let me check out, I'm on master, all right. Master hasn't been updated. It's still all of the old version of everything, right? And I already deleted my branch, but let's look at my branches here. My old branch is still here, and I can still check out simplify. That's because the changes I made are on GitHub, but not on my local computer yet, because I worked remotely in that case. So I need to pull them down to my local computer. So I'm going to check out my master branch again, and then I'm going to do a git pull. And what that should do is get all of the changes from the remote and pull them down locally. So now if I go over here and look, and I think I need to update too. Let me double check. I don't have any tracking information. All right, just a moment. So I need to git pull origin master. So I'm telling it what branch to pull and where to pull from. There we go. Now we see, here are all of my changes to my file. And now if I did my git log, sure enough, I see all of my changes as expected. And my file's the version that I expect. But the one interesting thing here is I still have my other branch locally. And that's just one of those artifacts of Git. If you do a branching model like that, you'll have to manage those branches locally and clean them up yourself after you've deleted them, doing something like a merge. All right. Let me check the time. It's getting pretty late. I don't want to hold you guys any longer, but let me know if you think this walkthrough was effective, both trying to emphasize the Git stuff and working through the Jaden case sort of piece by piece building up. I know for some of you, this is something you already could have accomplished. But I know there were a lot of questions around it too. And what I would love to see is for Thursday, try and work through test cases for those different problems so that we can start converting those into code in our next class and working through those. All right, I'm gonna get going. Please post any feedback. Let me know any input that you have, but I hope it was effective and useful for you tonight, sort of working through this bit by bit. And I'll see you guys on Thursday.